Today I'm going to be covering replacing the motor on an electric EEW5. I've found that the motor for the electric EEW5 lasts a very long time. I've run them continuously for over 3 months and haven't had a motor failure. However, once in a while there's a bad motor in the batch, and those generally fail really quickly. So anytime that happens, I replace the motor for free. So here's a video a user sent in of a motor that has failed.
Okay, this is the noise it makes when it's just turning. Okay, this is what it sounds like when it's turned on.
What we're going to show today is exactly how you get in there and replace the motor, which is this guy. And I guess before I do that, I'll talk about the tools you're going to need. So you just need a pair of pliers, a Phillips screwdriver, a small regular screwdriver, and maybe a pair of needle nose pliers, but I don't really use these, but it's kind of nice for pulling up these bands sometimes. If you're having trouble pull those up, you can use a pair of needle nose. But yeah, let's get started and show you how you go about replacing it. So the first thing I'll do is I'll disconnect the drive band here, pop off the tension band, and now the motor's free from the flyer, and we'll pop off these two bands that hold the motor in place. And now the motor's released, which is a good thing, but we have to unscrew the wire connections here. And in order to do that, you actually have to remove this circuit board plate. So the steps here are generally to take a pair of pliers. If you've got a wrench works great too. But I'll just use pliers because more people have those. And it's a lock nut, so it doesn't come off really easily, which is why you got to hold it in place with a pair of pliers. And then you just screw that guy off. And I've got one more screw down on the bottom that I'm going to get. Yeah, it's kind of hard doing this on camera. I've got the camera between me and the electric eel wheel now, but I'll manage. It is easier though if you're just kind of doing it without the pressures of time or camera. Okay, so now I've got both of those bolts off, and what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to keep the electric eel wheel horizontal. If you tilt it now, there's 2 spacers on each of these bolts that'll slide off, and that's not the end of the world. You can definitely put those back on, but things will go a little bit easier and quicker if you keep them on. So now I'm going to detach the motor. And that's just 2 regular screws down here. And this terminal block. And I use this kind of a terminal block so they don't vibrate loose. Okay, so now at that point I've got the motor disconnected, and if this was a bad motor, you could replace it. I kind of twist these wires together. I mean, that's not really necessary, but you know, it definitely doesn't hurt anything. So at this point, I would then insert the wires into the right place. Now, hopefully you can see that, but yeah, it looks like you can. So it says black right there on the top, and it says red down on the bottom. So you want to match those colors with the motor wires. And now I'm kind of holding these screws because I don't want these circuit board screws to fall out. Let's go sideways again. Or let's go the other way, because this will make it a little easier to get the motor wires in. Okay, so now I just put the right colored wire in the right screw terminal, hold it in there, and then you screw it until it's tight. You don't have to get these super tight, but they'll definitely, I mean, you pull on the wire, and if it doesn't come out, then it's being held in place by the screw. And get the other wire in. Screw until it's nice and snug. And now at this point, the motor should be working. And I'll actually show you. I mean, if you're wondering if this motor is working, you can plug it in. Because there's nothing connected, it's pretty easy to just turn it, and it's going to spin in different directions when you turn the speed dial. So I don't want it going off while I'm assembling, so I'll unplug the power again. And now I have to put the plate back in place for the circuit board. There we go. And you've got these nuts you put back on, and to save time I won't tighten them all the way, but you'd use the plier and the Phillips screwdriver again to tighten these nuts. Then you want to put this motor back in place. I find a nice trick is to oops. Well, here, let's show you what, I mean, normally I can, when I'm not on camera, I have more space and I can get it without the needle nose. But if you want to make it easier on yourself, you can use a needle nose to kind of pull these through. And we've got those. Now you want to make sure that all four of those are sort of aligned properly, sort of spaced out pretty well. And then at this point, I would put the drive band back on, even before I try to get things too straightened out with the motor, because it's easier to align the motor once this band is on. And pop the elastic band, tension band on the back. So now I talked about aligning the band, and what that means is you want to make sure that this band goes directly to the motor pulley and it's pretty straight, and that it doesn't rub up against the wood. So this one's pretty good. You can move the motor back and forth if it's not quite lined up, but I think we're good here. And then at this point, we're done. We plug it back in and we have a electric eel wheel with a functioning motor.